The house at the edge of Maple Ridge Town always looked peaceful from the outside. Small, wooden, with a porch that creaked when the wind passed through it. But from the inside, it felt different, quiet in a heavy way, like someone had turned down the volume of life. This house belonged to Daniel Hale, a man who used to smile easily, laugh loudly, and dream openly. But after losing his wife 3 years ago, something inside him had folded in on itself. His days became slow, predictable, and controlled, as if he feared that any sudden change might shatter him completely. Daniel tried his best to be strong for his two daughters, Lily, 12, and Emma, 10. They were sweet, bright girls who carried the same spark their mother once had. But even children could feel the weight in the air, the absence of her voice, her warm footsteps in the kitchen, her gentle humming while she cooked. The house still carried her memories, but instead of comfort, they felt like reminders of what Daniel had failed to protect. Every corner held a shadow of the past, and every evening felt colder than the last. Most nights Daniel returned home late from his job at the factory. He would drop his keys on the table, hear them echo against the wooden surface, and take a deep breath before entering the living room. His daughters always tried to greet him with smiles, but he often walked past them without noticing. It wasn't because he didn't love them. It was because he was afraid that if he opened his heart, he would break, afraid that showing joy might dishonor the grief he still carried. That evening was no different. Daniel was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner of rice and vegetables. His hands moved automatically, with no real thought behind each cut. The sound of the knife against the board echoed through the silent room. He stared at the wall in front of him, lost somewhere between memory and exhaustion. Then it happened. The front door slammed open so suddenly that Daniel nearly cut his finger. His heart jumped in his chest. For a moment, he thought one of the neighborhood bullies had come to bother his girls again. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked quickly toward the living room. "Dad," Lily's voice trembled between excitement and fear. "Please don't be mad, we found someone." Daniel frowned. The last time they said those words, they had brought home a stray kitten that later turned out to belong to the neighbor. But as he stepped into the living room, he froze completely, his breath catching in his throat. Standing beside his daughters was a woman unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin was smooth and silver, almost metallic but somehow soft. Her eyes glowed faint blue like tiny lanterns holding the light of a distant star. Her hair hung down her back in long, shimmering strands that moved as though they held their own faint breeze. She stood barefoot, wearing something like a damaged suit made from glowing threads. Her posture was tense, cautious, and her expression, wide, alert eyes and trembling lips, said only one thing. She was scared. Daniel's mind raced. His instincts told him to protect his daughters, to stand between them and this unknown being. But another part of him, the part that still remembered what fear felt like, saw something else. He saw a lost soul. Before he could speak, Lily stepped forward. "Dad, she saved us. A car was speeding near the old bridge. She lifted it like nothing and pulled us away." Emma nodded quickly, her small hands still clutching the alien woman's fingers. "She's hurt too. She didn't want to come inside, but we begged her. Please don't send her away." For a long moment, Daniel just stared. He felt confusion, shock, fear, and something deeper he had not felt in years. The feeling that something extraordinary had entered his life, something that might change everything. The alien woman swallowed hard, then spoke in careful, slow English. "My name is I am sorry. I did not want to bring fear. I only wished to keep them safe." Her voice was soft, gentle, almost musical, and trembling with exhaustion. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. All he could do was look into her glowing eyes and see the one emotion he understood all too well. Loneliness. And in that moment the quiet house did not feel so quiet anymore. Something had shifted. Something had begun. Something that none of them were prepared for. The house felt alive for the first time in years. Daniel could hear the girls chattering their voices overlapping with giggles, questions, and bursts of laughter. It was strange, almost magical how quickly adapted. Her silver hands explored the kitchen utensils, turning spoons, cups, and even the rice cooker into objects of wonder. She asked endless questions, sometimes repeating the same words over and over to understand them fully. Why does this move when I press it? She asked, tapping the toaster. That's called electricity, Lily explained patiently, pointing to the tiny wires and lights. It makes things work, kind of like magic, but it's science. Tilted her head, a glowing curl falling over her eye. Magic or science, does it matter? Both are wonder. Even Daniel, who preferred silence and routine, found himself watching from the doorway, fascinated. There was something about her curiosity, her way of seeing ordinary things as extraordinary. It reminded him of the days when his daughters were tiny, discovering the world with wide eyes and open hearts. The memory was bittersweet, stirring a warmth he had long buried under grief. That evening after dinner, Daniel noticed standing in the backyard. She was gazing at the sky, her glowing eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. The girls were inside, whispering excitedly about helping her understand Earth better. Daniel approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "You miss someone?" said quietly without looking at him. Her voice carried a weight that made Daniel pause. He stopped mid-step, stunned. "What, how do you know that?" She finally turned her gaze toward him. Her glowing blue eyes softened, almost human in their intensity. "Humans carry it on their hearts, I can feel it." Daniel swallowed hard. "I miss my wife," he admitted, the words breaking free like a dam finally giving way. She died 3 years ago. I try to keep everything together, but sometimes it's like the walls are closing in. I don't know how to be happy again." Nodded slowly, stepping closer. "I understand more than you think. My home is gone, my people. I do not know if I will see them again. I am alone, far from the stars I knew." Daniel's chest tightened. He felt a strange connection, a shared loneliness between two beings from different worlds. And yet, there was something in his presence that made him feel alive again, like hope was slowly returning to the corners of his life. The girls came out then, Lily holding a notebook. "Look," she said, "we made a list of all the things we can teach you." Emma clutched a small stuffed bear. "And we can help you rest. You must be tired from everything." Bent down, her glowing hands gently taking the girl's hands. "You are kind. I have not felt kindness like this in a long time, thank you." Daniel watched, a lump forming in his throat. This alien woman, lost and scared, was bringing life back into his house. She was teaching them courage, patience, and wonder, just as much as they were teaching her what it meant to be human. Days passed in a quiet rhythm of discovery. Learned how to use a sink without flooding it, how to make toast without igniting it, and even how to fold clothes, though she often did it with her hands glowing faintly, leaving the fabrics warm to the touch. The girls laughed every time she tried to mimic their expressions and failed, their laughter echoing in the house that had long forgotten sound. One evening, Daniel found sitting by the window, staring at the stars again. He joined her, leaning on the sill. "Do you miss them?" he asked softly. "Yes, but more than that, I miss belonging somewhere. I miss feeling like I matter," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, revealing a vulnerability Daniel hadn't expected from someone who seemed so powerful. "You do matter," Daniel said firmly. "Right now you matter to me and to my daughters. You've saved them, and somehow you've saved me too." His glowing eyes widened slightly, reflecting the lights of the town below. You mean that?" "Yes," he said. "Humans, we remember kindness, we don't forget it, and sometimes it's all it takes to heal." For a long moment they watched the sky in silence, two lonely souls finding comfort in each other's presence. Daniel realized something he hadn't in years. It was okay to feel again, to hope, to care. The wind picked up, rustling the trees, and silver hair shimmered under the moonlight. "Perhaps," she said softly, "this world is not so lonely after all." Daniel smiled, a small, fragile smile, but one that felt real. "No," he agreed, "not when there's someone willing to share it with you." And in that quiet backyard, under the stars that connected them across worlds, something shifted. The weight of grief lightened slightly, replaced by a fragile but undeniable warmth. The quiet house at the edge of town was no longer completely empty. Something extraordinary had arrived, something that might change everything. And Daniel, for the first time in years, felt the stirrings of hope. The days passed slowly, but in a way that Daniel had almost forgotten existed. moved through their small home with quiet fascination, exploring every corner, every object, as if the simplest things were treasures she had never seen before. She learned to use spoons and cups, to turn lights on and off without overwhelming them, and even to fold laundry, though she did so with glowing fingers that left the clothes faintly warm. Daniel watched it all from the doorway, sometimes smiling, sometimes just feeling a strange warmth in his chest he could not name. Lily and Emma were constantly at her side, teaching her words, songs, and games. They laughed when tried to mimic their expressions, failing in ways that were adorable rather than clumsy. Emma insisted on reading bedtime stories to her, while Lily taught her how to draw flowers and cats. And every night Daniel would find sitting by the window, gazing at the sky with eyes that reflected not just the stars, but a sadness so profound it made his heart ache. One evening, Daniel joined her. The girls had gone to bed, leaving the house quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant rustle of wind in the trees. Leaned against the windowsill, her silver hair shimmering in the moonlight. "You miss someone," she said softly. Daniel hesitated, unsure if he should answer, but something in her tone, soft, almost like understanding without judgment, made him speak. "I miss my wife," he admitted. She passed away 3 years ago, and I don't know how to be happy without her." His glowing eyes softened. "I understand," she whispered. "I too have lost my home, my people. I am far from where I belong, alone for the first time in my life." Daniel felt a strange connection to her, a bond formed not through shared language or species, but through a shared understanding of loneliness. Here was a being from another world, yet her grief mirrored his own. Her presence was strange, luminous, and frightening, yet comforting. The silence between them stretched, not awkwardly but peacefully. Daniel noticed how studied the night sky, her eyes reflecting constellations he could not name. It was as if she was looking for something, someone beyond the stars. "Do you feel afraid?" he asked quietly. Nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes, afraid of being hunted, afraid of being alone, afraid of what comes next, but here I feel safe, and that is unfamiliar." Daniel felt an unexpected pang of protectiveness. He reached out instinctively, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're safe here," he said firmly, "and you don't have to face anything alone, not while we're here." Turned toward him fully, her glowing eyes meeting his. For a moment, the alien woman seemed small and vulnerable, far from the powerful being he had imagined when he first saw her. "You trust me, yet you help me. Why?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Because you saved my daughters, you risked yourself for them, that means something, it matters, and maybe it's time I stop being afraid to care again." She studied his face for a long moment. "Humans, your hearts are powerful. Even when you are broken, you still give, you give hope." He smiled faintly, a smile that felt like a spark in the dark. "Maybe that's what we're supposed to do, even when it's hard." The night stretched on, and the wind whispered through the trees. His presence, once strange and intimidating, now brought warmth into the house. Daniel realized that for the first time in years, the walls did not feel so heavy, the silence not so suffocating. Over the next few days, their routine settled into a fragile rhythm. Learned to help with chores without accidentally breaking them. She laughed with the girls, and they laughed with her. Sometimes she hummed soft melodies that felt like stars falling gently onto the earth. And every night, she would return to the window to stare at the sky, thinking of a home far away, but also finding comfort in the family who had taken her in. One evening, she asked Daniel to join her again. They stood silently, looking at the stars that stretched endlessly above. "You've given me something I thought I lost forever," said softly. Your family, you let me belong even for a little while." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. "And you've reminded me what it feels like to care again," he said, "to hope, to live." His glowing hand brushed against his. "Then perhaps being lost was not the end. Perhaps being found is a new beginning." Daniel nodded, looking at the stars and feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Hope. A small, fragile joy that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't completely empty after all. But as the night deepened, his eyes flickered toward the horizon. Her expression, though calm, carried a shadow Daniel could not yet understand. Something was coming, something beyond their small house, beyond their quiet town. And though it had not arrived yet, he could feel it deep in his bones. For now, though, he held onto the warmth of the present, the warmth of his presence, the laughter of his daughters, the fragile light that had returned to a house that had once been empty. And in that moment, Daniel knew. Life was beginning again in a way he had almost forgotten how to imagine. Winter had begun to settle over Maple Ridge, the nights colder and longer, and the wind sharper as it whistled through the trees. Daniel's house, which had begun to feel warm and alive again, suddenly carried a sense of unease he couldn't shake. Had grown stronger and more comfortable with the family, but her glances at the horizon were sharper now, more alert. She moved carefully around the house, her glowing blue eyes scanning every shadow, every distant sound. One evening, as the girls played quietly in the living room, froze mid-step near the window. Her body stiffened and the room seemed to grow colder. Daniel noticed her suddenly pale expression under her silver skin. "What is it?" he asked. "They are coming," she whispered almost too softly for him to hear. Her voice trembled, carrying the weight of fear. "They know I am here, they hunt travelers like me. I must leave, but I cannot leave you." Daniel felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't experienced in years. "We're not sending you away," he said firmly. "You've saved my daughters, and I won't let anyone take you from us." Shook her head. "It is not safe. They are hunters, strong, relentless. They will destroy anything in their way." Before Daniel could respond, a low hum began to vibrate through the air. It started faint, almost like distant thunder, but it grew louder, sharper, like metal cutting through silence. The girls froze, their eyes wide. Emma clutched Lily's hand. Daniel stepped to the door, peering into the darkness beyond the yard. A strange, dark shape hovered above the tree line. It was sleek, silent, and entirely alien. A ship unlike anything he had seen, with glowing markings along its hull and an eerie hum that set his teeth on edge. "They found me," said, her glowing hands rising slightly as if ready to defend them. Her voice was calm, but her body betrayed tension. Lily stepped forward, brave despite her fear. "Don't go, please stay." Emma sobbed softly, hiding behind her sister. "You can't leave us alone." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "No one is going anywhere," he said firmly. "You're staying. We fight together if we have to." Looked at him, her glowing eyes wide with surprise. No human had ever spoken like that to her before, so calm, so certain, so brave. For a moment she forgot to fear. Then the ship released two figures, descending like shadows that devoured the light around them. They were tall, dark-bodied, with glowing weapons that seemed alive, humming with lethal energy. Their eyes were small, cold, and merciless. Tensed, ready to defend, but her strength was limited after the crash, and the hunters were far too powerful for her alone. "They are not my people," she whispered to Daniel, her voice barely audible. They trade travelers like me for reasons I do not wish to imagine." Daniel felt a surge of anger, hot and protective. "Then they will have to deal with me first," he said, his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. He grabbed the first thing he could reach, a heavy metal pipe, and stood in front of the girls. Studied him carefully. "You are only human, you cannot fight them." "I'm human," he admitted, "and maybe I'm not strong enough to stop them, but I am strong enough to protect my family." The hunters moved forward, their weapons humming dangerously. Hands began to glow brightly, energy swirling around her in pulses that lit up the yard. Daniel shouted to the girls, "Go inside, hide." The girls ran, trembling, while Daniel stayed with standing firm. He swung the metal pipe, hitting one of the hunters' legs with all his might. It made the creature stagger just enough for it to strike with a burst of brilliant light. The air crackled with energy, shadows dancing across the yard. The hunters advanced again, but Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Courage born of love, fear transformed into determination. Glanced at him, her glowing eyes softened. "You fight not because you are strong," she said, her voice rising over the hum of battle. "You fight because you care." Daniel nodded, raising the pipe again. "Exactly, because I care." And in that moment, two lonely hearts, one human, one alien, stood together under the cold winter sky, ready to face the darkness that had come for them. The battle was only beginning, but for the first time, Daniel felt alive in a way he hadn't since his wife's death. The air in the yard vibrated with tension. Daniel could feel it in his chest, a mix of fear, adrenaline, and determination. Stood beside him, her glowing silver skin radiating light that flickered like the pulse of a distant star. The two alien hunters advanced, their movements fast and precise, weapons humming dangerously. Daniel gripped the metal pipe he had picked up earlier, knuckles white, his heart pounding as if it might break free of his chest. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice loud enough to carry over the hum of the approaching hunters. His daughters had hidden inside, peering through the windows, their small faces pale with terror. Emma clutched the edge of the couch, while Lily whispered prayers under her breath. Moved first, energy surging from her hands in bright arcs of blue light. The hunters staggered, momentarily blinded by the sudden burst. Daniel swung the metal pipe, striking one hunter's leg with all his strength. The creature stumbled, and Daniel felt a rush of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive this. But the hunters were relentless. The second one lunged toward with a speed that made Daniel flinch. Her glowing hands moved defensively, and a shockwave knocked him backward. Dust and leaves scattered through the yard. Daniel's heart raced, fear gripping him as he saw struggle. "You can't fight them alone," he shouted, stepping forward. "Not if you care about us." His eyes met his. For a brief moment, he saw something he hadn't seen before, doubt. But then she drew a deep breath, energy gathering around her like a shimmering shield. "Then we fight together," she said softly, determination in every word. Daniel felt courage swell inside him. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for his daughters, for the home that had finally felt alive again. He swung the pipe with all the strength a father could muster, striking again, forcing the hunter to retreat slightly. His energy pulsed brighter, illuminating the yard with a blinding blue light. The first hunter recovered and lunged at Daniel. He dodged barely, but the creature's arm grazed him, leaving a burning line across his shoulder. Pain shot through him, but he gritted his teeth and swung again, hitting the hunter squarely. Sent a wave of energy forward, knocking the attackers back, but one hunter staggered toward her, relentless. "Go inside, hide," Daniel shouted, knowing the girls had to be safe. Lily and Emma hesitated, but his voice, filled with authority and love, pushed them back into the house. His energy surged brighter than before. She let out a sound, a combination of a hum and a cry, and the hunters were thrown backward. The ground shook, dust swirling around them. Daniel ran to, grabbing her arm. "We're not giving up," he shouted. "Not now, not ever." The hunters staggered to their feet, but Daniel noticed something surprising. Though still recovering from her crash, was drawing strength not from fear, not from survival, but from trust. Trust in him, in his family, in the bond they had formed in just a few short days. The hunters charged once more, raised her glowing hands, and unleashed a concentrated burst of energy that lit up the yard like lightning. Daniel pushed forward, striking the last hunter with the metal pipe. The creature fell, unconscious, its weapon clattering across the yard. A moment of silence fell over the scene, lowered her hands, breathing heavily, exhausted but unharmed. Daniel sank to his knees, chest heaving, the adrenaline slowly fatting. He looked at, who smiled faintly at him, her glowing eyes soft and warm. "You fight not because you are strong," said, voice shaking slightly, "but because you care. That is your power." Daniel shook his head, still panting. "No, my power comes from the people I protect. You reminded me what it feels like to care again, to fight for something worth living for." His eyes glistened, reflecting the soft lights of the house and the stars above. For the first time in a long while, Daniel saw her not as an alien stranger, but as someone who had become part of their family. The girls rushed out, hugging their father and tightly. Tears, laughter, and relief all mixed into one powerful moment. Daniel held them close, feeling warmth in his chest he hadn't known in years. Knelt beside them, placing a glowing hand on Emma's shoulder. "You gave me something I had lost," she whispered. "A reason to keep going." Daniel looked up at her, his face streaked with sweat and dirt. "And you reminded me that hope isn't gone, even in the darkest times." The yard was quiet now, the hunters unconscious, the threat gone for the moment. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Danger would come again. Challenges would rise. But tonight, in the glow of energy, in the embrace of his daughters, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: strength, courage, and a family united against the darkness. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel believed that no matter what came, they would survive. Together, the house was quiet again, but this time the silence was different. It no longer carried the heaviness of grief or fear. Instead, it hummed softly with relief, with warmth, with life slowly returning to the corners that had once been cold and empty. Daniel sat on the couch, his body still trembling from the fight, while lay across it, exhausted but alive. The faint glow of her skin had dimmed slightly, like the flicker of a star settling into the night sky. Lily and Emma hovered nearby, worried but curious, their small faces streaked with tears. They had never seen their father like this, tired, scared, but brave, and they had never seen like this either, vulnerable, quiet, almost human in her exhaustion. Emma stepped forward, placing her tiny hand on his glowing arm. "Please don't die," she whispered, her voice trembling. Lifted her head slowly, a soft smile touching her lips. "I will not while I still have someone to protect." Her voice, though quiet, carried strength and gratitude. She looked at Daniel, her glowing eyes reflecting the warmth of the room, the love of the family she had come to cherish. "You saved them, and now you save me." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes, a strange mixture of relief, pride, and awe filling his chest. He reached out, placing a hand on hers. "You've done more than anyone could ask," he said. "You gave my daughters hope, and you've given me life again." His eyes softened, and she studied him for a long moment. "Your people, you're kind, you care even when it is not easy. That is something I had forgotten existed." She paused, her glowing fingers brushing against the edge of the couch. I feared being alone forever, but now I know that even in the darkest places, light can be found." Lily stepped closer, clutching his hand tightly. "We want you to stay," she said simply, the determination in her voice surprising Daniel. "You belong here now." Emma nodded eagerly. "You're part of our family." His glow flickered softly, warmth spreading through her entire body. She had never felt anything like this before: love, acceptance, belonging. For the first time since her crash, she felt something she thought she had lost: home. Daniel looked at them all, the weight of years pressing down on him, and then lifting in the same heartbeat. He had spent so long in silence, so long in grief, that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to care, to hope, to feel alive. And now, standing in this room, surrounded by his daughters and this extraordinary being, he realized that life had given him a second chance. The wind outside rattled the windows, cold and sharp, but inside the house was warm. Sat up slowly, her glowing hands resting on her lap. "I never expected this," she said softly. "To find a people who would accept me even when I am different, who would fight for me and let me fight for them." Daniel reached out, resting his hand on her shoulder. "We are not different in the ways that matter," he said. "We all have hearts. We all feel fear, hope, love, and loss, and those things, they make us strong." His eyes glimmered with something almost human: tears. "Then, thank you," she whispered. "For giving a lonely traveler more than shelter, you gave me a reason to live." Daniel smiled, the emotion in his chest nearly overwhelming him. "And you gave us something we thought we had lost," he said quietly. "You brought life back into this house and into my heart." The girls sat beside, their small arms wrapped around her, and she let herself feel it all: the laughter, the warmth, the safety of a family who had taken her in when she was at her most vulnerable. She had feared the worst, but now she realized that hope could arrive in the most unexpected forms, even in the quietest of human homes. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a lightness in his chest, a quiet joy that was unburdened by grief. He watched and his daughters together, laughter returning to the house like sunlight spilling through the windows. The battle had left scars, yes, but it had also brought healing, connection, and something far more powerful: trust. That night, as the family settled down to sleep, Daniel lingered in the living room for a moment, watching drift into a quiet, peaceful rest. He realized that the loneliness he had carried for so long was finally lifting, and in its place, a fragile, precious thing was taking root: hope, belonging, love. He knew that challenges might come again. Danger could appear, unpredictable and fierce. But for now, in this small house at the edge of town, with his daughters laughing softly and resting safely, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years: Life was beginning again, and this time he would embrace it. And somewhere deep in his chest, he carried a quiet certainty. They were no longer alone. Never again.